Hello everyone, my name is Elizabeth Campbell. I'm a PhD candidate at Korea University in the North Korean Studies Department. So this presentation is based on a paper that I wrote about a year and a half ago. The purpose of the paper was to examine the roles and functions of around 5 members of the Kim family, specifically women, to try and figure out what kind of purpose they had, I suppose, within the family dynamic and the political system in North Korea. So that was basically my introduction. Then I'll move into a literature review. I'll go over brief biographical details of 5 women. Then I have a comparative analysis and my conclusion. I apologize if any of this presentation seems rushed or there's a lack of information. I did my best to try and condense a 22-page paper into a 15-minute presentation for you all today. So most influential figures in North Korean politics are men. However, for the 3 generations of the Kim family that have ruled North Korea, there have been a handful of women that held important roles, and they also had some power or influence. So the roles these women held and what traits were valued in them changed over the years. That represents a change in social expectations and roles for women. It also represents a change in the goals and ambitions of the North Korean political regime. So the duties that the North Korean ruling party gave these women reflected the political aims and priorities relevant to that period. So most of my sources here are for biographical information. So I've used The Great Successor and Becoming Kim Jong-un for information about Kim Yo-jong, Ri Sol-ju, and Kim Jong-un and kind of the relationship between the 3. I also use North Korea Leadership Watch from 38 North for a lot of the biographical information about Kim Kyung-hee, Ko Young-hee, and Kim Jong-suk. Then there was a two-part report, by Gianluca Spezza for NK News on the women of North Korea, and some biographies of Kim Il-sung. So I'd like to start by talking about Kim Jong-suk. So she was the wife of Kim Il-sung and mother of Kim Jong-il. A lot of her biography has been built up and changed in the North Korean founding mythology. So the information I've included, I feel is factual, but if you know of something different, if any of this is wrong, I apologize. As far as I was able to find through my research, she was orphaned at a young age. She might have also lost her siblings. She joined the guerrilla fighters, was arrested and imprisoned by the Japanese Imperial Army. But after she got out, she rejoined the guerrillas, and it's believed that she married Kim Il-sung after that period. So for a short period of time, she was North Korea's first lady. And most of the information we have about her life from this time period comes from reports from diplomats from Hungary, the Soviet Union, and they talk about her attending official events and hosting international dignitaries and guests. She died, it's believed she died of childbirth, and her role in North Korea's family mythology was then expanded. So that's why it's so hard to get biographical information on her, was after her death, she was made into this immortal maternal figure for women in the DPRK to look up to. So she was made one of the 3 generals that include Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il, because the state needed a role model for North Korean women to emulate, because they needed to take on a dual or manifold role as a mother, a worker, and a revolutionary. So they used Kim Jong-suk's image and her biographical details to try and convince women, look, this is a woman who did everything perfectly. She was a wife, a fighter, a mother, a leader, and you too can be like her if you have the right revolutionary spirit. Don't complain about the fact that you have to have children, raise them, educate them, make them fighters, also work in a factory, also maybe clean the factory at night, and then do voluntary labor. Don't complain. Try to be the kind of woman that Kim Jong-suk would be proud of. So here are some famous images of her. This is her in the center holding the odd-looking gun, leading guerrilla fighters in the rain into battle. There's also this one, which was meant to be a family portrait. This is supposedly the cabin in the mountains where Kim Jong-il was born. The next person I'd like to talk about is Kim Kyung-hee. So she was the daughter of Kim Jong-suk and Kim Il-sung. This is her with her brother and father. I'm not sure of her age in this photo. She was very well educated. She went to Kim Il-sung University's political economy department, and she also studied abroad at Moscow State University. So she took a very different path than her mother. Although she did marry and have kids, she was very focused on her political career from a young age. She started in the Korean Democratic Women's Union, and then just went up the ranks of the North Korean political apparatus throughout her life. She was very rarely mentioned in the media during her father's time as the leader of North Korea. For example, she was listed on his funeral committee, but there weren't images like this of her being spread around. She was not meant to be a role model for North Korean women to look up to, possibly because she was so career focused. So very different from her mother, as I said. She didn't make public appearances while her father was in office, but later she took on a larger role in her brother's government. She also, I guess, broke some barriers for women. She was the first woman in North Korea to be made a general in the Korean People's Army. And in the late 1990s and early 2000s, she made public appearances, sort of in the role that a first lady would take on. This is a very recent photo of her. There were rumors that she died in the early 2000s, but I think this photo was taken in 2021. So by all accounts, she's still alive in Junhyoung, doing well. This is her, you can see fourth from the left of her brother at an event. I'd also like to talk about Ko Young-hee. So while Kim Young-hee joined Kim Jong-il at a couple of events, the closest thing that North Korea had to a first lady during Kim Jong-il's time as leader was Ko Young-hee. So she was ethnically Korean, born to Korean parents, but in Japan. And her family was one of many families that moved to North Korea during the 1960s, during this call for the Korean people to return to the North and bring all of their money and their possessions with them. So she became a dancer as she got older and joined the Mansudae dance troupe, which is where she met Kim Jong-il. He was the manager of the troupe at the time, and the two began a relationship. They never married, but they had 3 children that include Kim Jong-un and Kim Yo-jung. So this is a photo of them at an official event. I'm sorry the quality isn't great. This was probably taken in 1999. Because Ko Young-hee was born in Japan, she had low songbun, which is the social and political status based on family history and loyalty to the state. So that was a little tricky because the North Korean government was saying that people who came from Japan were traitors, they couldn't be trusted, and yet one of them was the mother of Kim Jong-un, who was going to be the future leader of North Korea. So she was able to rise above her family status to a certain extent. She was mentioned in some early 2000s indoctrination and political education materials as a respected mother, which harkens back to Kim Jong-suk and the, I guess, mythos building around her. They also said she was assisting Kim Jong-il from the close quarters of his body. So I take that as an acknowledgement of their relationship, but again, she was never given the title of First Lady. So I think these references were more an attempt to legitimize Kim Jong-un as the future leader rather than to elevate Ko Young-hee. This is a picture taken of her at an official event, and I'd like you just to take a note of what she's wearing here because I am going to talk a little bit about the way that first ladies are presented and styled for the public. So what she's wearing kind of matches Kim Jong-il's classic Mao uniform, neutral colors, militaristic. No Kim Il-sung pin, no jewelry, no makeup. Next, I'd like to talk about Kim Yo-jung. So mentored and supported by her aunt, Kim Jong-hee, and her father, Kim Jong-il, Kim Yo-jung also started her political career at a young age. She was educated in Switzerland and then attended the Kim Il-sung Military University, became a junior cadre in the Central Party at age 20, and was later promoted to a position in the Organization and Guidance Department. She eventually became vice president of the Propaganda and Agitation Department and managed all public affairs broadcasts and news media. And I think that's quite significant because that was a role that her father also held in, I think it was 1968, he was made president of the Propaganda and Agitation Department. So she played a major role in establishing Kim Jong-un's public image, and she also accompanied him on official events. She also took his place as the representative of the party when he was recovering from an illness in 2014. That was when he broke both of his ankles or maybe had surgery for gout in China. In February of 2018, she attended the opening ceremony of the Pyeongchang Olympic Games and had lunch with President Moon at the Blue House. So this international trip, I think, made her the focus of intense media coverage and scrutiny more than any other Kim family woman or female politician from North Korea had experienced up to that point. So this has led to some speculation, especially online, that she's next in the line of succession. She's not, for many reasons, but she clearly holds a lot of influence and importance both within her family unit and in the DPRK political structure. I also think that she's a very interesting She's an interesting character because I think that she took on a lot of her aunt's identity, but in a much more international way. So she's also married with children as far as we know, but again, there's no press coverage in North Korea of her focusing on maternal and domestic characteristics the way that they do with Kim Jong-suk. This is her with President Moon. And the last woman I'd like to talk about is Ri Sol-ju. So I don't think she's quite as well known by name, at least, as Kim Yo-jong, but she's also the opposite of Kim Yo-jong in a lot of ways. Believed to have married Kim Jong-un in 2009 at age 20. So before that, she did travel abroad. She was a member of a cheerleading troupe, actually, and it's believed that she went to Japan, maybe one other country, when she was in her teen years. But like I said, married very young. I don't think she had any university education. But she was officially referred to as the First Lady of the DPRK in 2012. The term they use kind of translates to comrade, but she's the first woman who's been acknowledged as the First Lady of the DPRK since Kim Jong-suk. So it's very significant that they gave her that title. Images of her accompanying Kim Jong-un to official events have circulated in the international media, and a lot of attention has been paid to her appearance. So unlike the photo I showed you of Ko Young-hee, where she was wearing the brown suit, no pin, no makeup, very plain, I don't mean that to be insulting, but clearly trying to put forth an image of a serious person. So she has very fashionable clothing, she carries a designer purse, she wears makeup, beautiful jewelry, and in later years, around 2017, 2018, 2019, she started making international appearances with Kim Jong-un, and she was kind of given a makeover that made her resemble other first ladies. So she and Kim Jong-un have children, but a lot of the domestic media coverage of her describes her as respected, but not a respected mother, the way they did with Ko Young-hee. And they say that she is Kim Jong-un's comrade, which again is the term that they use for First Lady, but they really don't focus a lot on her maternal qualities. Ri Sol-ju's style is also noticeable because she's not a politician, but she's a representative of the North Korean government. And I think Kim Yo-jong probably had a hand in this makeover because she's the one who kind of created the public image of this couple. Not this couple, but Ri Sol-ju and Kim Jong-un, sorry. So the first photos of her, I have an example here. This photo was taken around 2012. It's one of the earliest appearances of her as the First Lady. You can see Kim Jong-un looks very young in this photo, and so does she. And again, not to be too rude, but the way that she's styled, it's not appropriate for a First Lady, especially not a First Lady who would be meeting with other foreign dignitaries. Then around 2018, 2019, she got a makeover. Now suddenly she's wearing suits kind of like Melania Trump. She's styled like Kate Middleton, the Duchess of Cambridge, much more professional and the kind of woman that doesn't look out of place at a major event. So moving on to the comparative analysis, the women I've spoken about today all had very different roles in the North Korean political apparatus. In the early days of North Korea's history, Kim Jong-suk exemplified the perfect wife and mother. Years later, her daughter, Kim Kyung-hee, was kept out of the media, but she worked very hard and for decades played an important role in both her father's and brother's governments. I would also argue that she played an important role in Kim Jong-un's government because she was a bit of a mentor to him. Ko Young-hee gave birth to the next leader of the DPRK, and she supported Kim Jong-il. And finally, Kim Yo-jong and Ri Sol-ju have very public-facing and significant roles in North Korea's domestic political scene and at international diplomatic events. So the reason these women were treated the way they were by the government was because they were needed to fulfill a very period-specific role. And I have a minute and 45 seconds, so I won't repeat all of this. I'll just move on to my conclusion. So the women's roles were based on the needs of the state and also the social issues that people were dealing with in North Korea during the relevant time periods. So focusing on the last 10 years, Kim Jong-un has been trying to make North Korea look more successful and modern, both because he wants to improve his international reputation and also because of this refugee crisis that started in the late 1990s. So as more and more North Koreans have defected or turned to private markets to survive, the old model of this Kim Jong-suk kind of idealized woman, it's no longer appealing to most women in North Korea. So instead, the new generation of the Kim family is trying to show North Korean women that they can be politically powerful, successful, they can stand next to foreign leaders, and they can be treated with respect in an international stage while still maintaining their loyalty to the state, a little bit like Ri Sol-ju. So I think that in earlier years, the First Lady was meant to be a maternal domestic figure, or one who was very serious and not flamboyant, didn't draw attention to herself, very modest. And now I think that thanks to Kim Yo-jong and her work on sorry, I forgot the word, the public image, of Kim Jong-un, that's really changed. And I think further appearances and responsibilities taken on by Kim Yo-jong and Ri Sol-ju are going to say a lot about North Korea's post-pandemic wants and needs. That's everything I have. Thank you.